things you've probably noticed that it's really hard to get the exact amounts of certain of your protein, your fat, and your carbohydrates. So what we want to do is keep foods on hand that help us dial those things in. So things that are easily dividable and things that are pure, or as pure as possible when it comes to protein, fat, or carbohydrates. Now, a couple of things I like to use, and I'm gonna prep these on this video. These are the two most basic, simple things you can do. But the first one is rice for your carbohydrates. So you can take this and you can divide it into any amount of portions that you need to get the numbers that you're looking for. So let's say you need a certain amount of rice, and you know that 1 cup of rice will get you that amount, or maybe you need 1.25 cups. But rice can be divided really easily into quantities to get you to the exact number that you want to go to. So in MyFitnessPal, what I do is I just kind of put in, okay, I need rice. I need 40 grams of carbs. So I'll put in rice, and I will adjust the amount of rice until I get to 40 grams of carbs, and whatever that amount is, I'll add it to my meal for that evening. But it's important that I have it prepped already. Same thing with ground beef, lean ground beef. I'm gonna do the exact same thing. If I get to the end of the day and I say, hey, I need 20 grams of protein, how much ground beef do I need to scale? How much ground beef do I need to measure to get me 20 grams of protein? I figure out what that is, and I add that to my meal. So I can easily divide up ground beef into whatever quantities I need to get that number as close as possible. Same thing with the rice. I can easily divide that up to get exactly where I want to be. For fats, a lot of times I'll use like some olive oil or some sour cream or something like that to get me to where I need to be. So if I'm a little short on fat for a meal and I need a certain amount of fat, I'll just measure how many tablespoons of olive oil do I need to get to that number, and I'll just add that to whatever I'm making. So I'm gonna take you guys through what I do. Rice. So with rice, most rices that you're gonna find, and if you have your own way of making rice, by all means, you can do that. I just wanted to show you how I like to do things. And so this is like a giant family size thing of rice. And you can do this a bunch of different ways. The way I like to do it is I look on the back and see how much water is recommended. And I'm gonna take that much water. This happens to be 4 cups. 4 cups of water, I'm gonna put that in the saucepan, bring it to a boil. When it's boiling, I'm gonna dump this in. I'm gonna stir it at a boil for about a minute. Then I'm gonna put the lid on it, turn it down to low for 20 minutes, and that's usually good. I just leave it be for 20 minutes on low, and by the time 20 minutes rolls around, all the rice is, all the water's cooked out, and rice is good to go. So I'll go ahead and do that now and get that started. I always add just a little bit extra because if there's water left, it always disappears. But if there's no water left, then it dries out and gets burnt. So always would rather have a little too much than not enough. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about the ground beef. With the ground beef, same thing. The idea here is small, something I can divide up easily into small portions to get the exact amount that I need to hit my numbers. So ground beef is obviously really small, so I can divide it up any way I need to. If I'm making chicken, what I'll do is I'll just chop the chicken up pretty small. Same thing with steak. If I'm making steak, I'll cut it up fairly small so that I can just add 1 piece and take away 1 piece, versus if I've got a whole piece of steak or a whole piece of chicken, I've got to cut it, I've got to guess, cut it, measure it, and then take it back and maybe cut a little bit off or add to it. But if it's all already chopped up, all I gotta do is measure it and I can move on. If I hadn't said this so far in the videos, you're gonna need a scale. So this I got off Amazon. I think it was like 10 bucks on Amazon. But some kind of scale that's gonna tell you the ounces. You're gonna definitely need that for your meat. Sometimes you'll need it for your carbs too, depending on what you're doing. But you're definitely gonna need that for your protein and for your meat. So I've got the rice going over there. I'm gonna move on to the ground beef. When it comes to the browning ground beef, basically just put a little bit of oil in the pan to keep it from sticking. Get it hot. chop, so I'm gonna chop up really small. That's just how I like to do it. If you like it a little bigger, that's fine too. As long as you can break it up into chunks, measure it into chunks, you'll be good. All right, so once I get it, I didn't talk about seasoning at all. You can season the ground beef however you want. A little salt and pepper, garlic powder. I've used like ranch seasoning before. It really doesn't matter as long as you're not adding like anything sweet to it, like sugar or anything like that. Anything dry, unless it's got brown sugar or something like that in it, is gonna be fine. So I haven't even picked out what I'm gonna do for this one, but I'll go take a look and let you know. Okay, so I've never tried this one before, but my wife got chili lime seasoning. Chili lime seasoning from, I think she got it from Trader Joe's. We'll see how it goes. It's just 1 week. I can change it next week. Now, when it comes to the quantities, so something like this got just seasoned to taste. If you like stuff with more seasoning, you can add more. Less, you can add less. And obviously, depending on how much you're going to be eating, you're going to need to make more or less. I usually start off with one. This is like a 1.3 pound package. Depending on what my wife's doing, that's usually enough, or it gets me, at least 2/3 of the way through the week, which is a huge help. The rice, though, I usually we'll both be eating the rice. So the rice, I usually do end up having to prep another batch of rice about halfway through the week. So it just kind of depends on how much you're eating. But and there'll be a little experimentation. Like the first week you do meal prep, you might make too much, you might not make enough. But just kind of observe and see how things go. And you don't have to do the same thing every week. I'm doing ground beef and rice today. Last week I did steak and sweet potatoes. Before that I've done chicken breasts and rice, or chicken thighs, whatever. As long as it's pre-made and you can split it up into small portions so that you can measure everything, that's all that really matters. Okay, so as you can see, got the ground beef going here. Let me just let you take a look at it. I tried to break it up into some decent chunks there. And I'm gonna break it up some more as I go. And I just sprinkled the seasoning over the top of it. Again, if you've ground beef before and you have your own way of doing it, it's just ground beef. So nothing fancy here, but I just like to make sure, in case you haven't, I give you some kind of guidance. So now I'm turning it over to get it on the other side cooked down, or browned. Kind of flip it over. Once I get it flipped over, give it another chop. Okay, so the rice is getting, the ground beef is getting pretty close. The rice, it's not. I do like to add a little bit of oil to the rice. Not enough to have to worry about counting, just enough to keep it from sticking together so much. So that is taking its sweet time. The ground beef is coming along. I'm gonna go ahead and grab some Tupperware so that when this gets done, I can put it right in the Tupperware, put it in the fridge, and not have to worry about it anymore. Okay, so the rice isn't quite done yet, but I'm feeling super impatient, and I'm gonna go ahead, the water isn't quite boiling yet, but I'm feeling super impatient, and I'm gonna go ahead and add it in and start to stir it. Maybe it'll get going here. So, all right, so it's nearly boiling. I'm just gonna cover it and turn it down to low and start a timer for 20-ish minutes. All right, my ground beef is looking pretty good. Here, let me give it one more turn. All right, what do you want? You want some cheese? Okay, here you go. Can we help you? All right, so the ground beef I think is done. I'll let you take a look at it before I put it in the Tupperware. Nothing fancy, like I said there, guys, just good old ground beef, lean ground beef. And I'm just gonna add it here right into my Tupperware. That's it, that's my ground beef. Like I said, this will give me probably 2-3 days worth of meals to kind of dial in depending on how much my wife wants and how much she uses. All right guys, so the rice is done too. And I'm gonna do the same thing. Just transfer it into my Tupperware here. And then I got a couple of things I wanna talk to you about real quick. Okay guys, so a couple quick things in closing. First of all, the whole point behind meal prep is creating some foods that we can easily divide at the end of the day in order to dial in our protein, our fat, and our carbohydrates. So these are just a protein source and a carbohydrate source that I can easily divide throughout the week at the end of the day or in the middle of the day, depending on when you're logging it, to get exactly as much as I need to get as close